Today's scripture, which Cynthia read, contains two entirely different messages, two different morals, two completely different worldviews. And fair warning, I am going to try to preach both. This is an important passage, one that our denomination has centered as a key text in our commitment to eradicate systemic poverty. So it is worth the time and energy to try to dig really deeply into the text. I will start with a more familiar interpretation. This one focuses on how two bold servants did a lot of good with the money given to them, while one fearful one held back and did not accomplish anything. The text has been preached this way for centuries. And in fact, this story is probably the origin of where we get our English word talent, turned into a metaphor, not for a vast sum of money anymore, but now for any gift you've been given. Because for centuries, preachers have been saying, it doesn't matter if God gave you only one little thing, you should still make the most of it. I do like reading it this way because it feels true to life. Yes, some have been given more than others, but that is no excuse for those of us who feel we have little to hold back. The existence of millionaires should not discourage an ordinary person from opening a small business. There are many kinds of fear, however, which do hold us back. We compare ourselves to one another, don't we? We say, oh, I'll never be able to do that big thing, so I might as well sit at home and do nothing. Maybe, for example, we have a talent for music, but since we know it's not enough to take us to the top of America's Got Talent, we never even go to the local open mic and sing. I felt that way for much of middle school, because my primary group of friends included some really terrific singers. They could harmonize spontaneously, and I had not learned how to do that yet. So I refrained completely from singing with them. But if I had allowed myself the vulnerability of singing with people who knew more than me, I would have developed those skills more quickly. Read this way, the moral of the scripture is, go for it. Grow. Don't let the size of your gift hold you back from growing it bigger. Open your little business. Record your little album. Start your YouTube channel. Whatever you do, just let your light shine and grow. Whatever you have, you can probably turn it into more. It seems like an important message for today, when we face such enormous obstacles. We see the mountain of need in our country and our world, and maybe we hold back because we know we can't fix it all. Certainly, those of us here in California cannot solve the enormous problems facing the people snowed under this week in regions like Texas that would never expect so much snow. But there is still much we can do. Helping one another here and now, sending money to mutual aid networks, advocating and working to fight climate change, which is the root cause of these terrible storms. We have enough privilege and power to do those things, so we should use those resources we can use. The thing here is that we always tend to look at the resources other people have, focusing especially on what they have that we don't have, and ignoring the resources we do have. In middle school, I never acknowledged that I had a fine singing voice, and I could read music well enough, but it didn't seem to be worth anything next to the great talents of my harmonizing friends. It has been called the invisible backpack of privilege. Somehow it's as if we carry our own resources on our backs where we cannot see them and appreciate them. Why are we so blind to what we have? That is why this parable is powerful. It forces us to confront the things we are holding back and ignoring. But as I promised, I also want to turn this parable on its head and preach it another way entirely. And this one is a little more sinister. For the alternate interpretation, we need to let the third servant speak for himself. He says, "Master, I knew you were a harsh man, reaping where you did not sow, and gathering where you did not scatter seeds. So I was afraid, and I went, and I hid your talent in the ground. Here, you have what is yours." This is the servant who was only given one talent. The one who, upon being assessed by the master, was deemed to be worthy of 1/5 or 1/10 the challenge and responsibility of his peers. You could say it was a self-fulfilling prophecy. If the master expected little of him, he turned right back around and delivered very little. But you could also say that it was a protest. In the ancient Hebrew context that Jesus came from, there was a certain suspicion of rapid financial growth. There's nothing wrong, of course, with having a good, steady livelihood, a farm or business, but making money on the level that these other servants did, doubling their money in what couldn't have been more than a year or two, that would be looked at as a little suspicious. Perhaps the third servant was more like Jesus himself, who arrived in the Jerusalem temple to see all the merchants and started to turn the tables over and drive the moneylenders out. Perhaps the third servant saw it for what it was, that there's no way to double your money so quickly without exploiting someone. He saw the unfairness also of how the master gave different amounts to different people, and so he opted out in protest. If we read it this way, we cannot see the master as God. No, the master in this story must be the masters of this world, the unjust masters who dole out great riches selectively, who expect a fast turnaround on their money and believe that others should increase their wealth for them while they take a long vacation. If we see it this way, we know we must protest as well, even if our protest is costly. It is not fair that a few billionaires are raking it in during this pandemic, while so many people are literally on the edge of starvation. It is not fair that even those who have a little are expected to be turning in great profits when they struggle just to get by. These injustices deserve attention and protest. Our church has declared a commitment and a challenge to eradicate systemic poverty. To eradicate it. That means not to soften it or reduce it a little, but to get rid of systemic poverty entirely. And I think to answer that challenge, we need both interpretations of this parable. First, we need to stand up and hold ourselves accountable for the resources and privileges we have. Are we putting our resources to work for justice? Or are we letting our power sit unused and acknowledged in our backpacks? And second, we need to be wise enough to see when simply doing our best in an unjust system is perpetuating injustice. We need to be wise enough to know when to start participating and to hold a protest instead. We need to stop congratulating ourselves for feeding people who are hungry, though we would never stop actually feeding them, and turn some of that energy towards City Hall or Sacramento or Washington, D.C. to ask why it's okay that so many people are hungry to begin with. I wonder which one you are more comfortable with. The challenge to fully use our resources, or the challenge to protest the injustice of the status quo? If there's one that feels more comfortable to you, I would invite you to look at the other one, the less comfortable one, and try to answer that call this Lent. We need both roots, both the wisdom to use our little bit of power within the system and the wisdom to withdraw from the system in protest. As we walk the journey of Lent, these coming 40 days, 37 days now, we try to live our lives with more intention and reflection and contemplation. We try to answer the call of the prophet Isaiah, who asks, "Is not this the fast that I have chosen? To loose the bonds of injustice, to undo the thongs of the yoke, to let the oppressed go free, and to break every chain." This is not an easy time. Our hearts are weary as we approach the 1-year anniversary of our first COVID lockdown. Our hearts are in pain as we watch the chaos and suffering inflicted by these heavy winter storms. But do not lose heart. Hold on to what is good. Try to stay flexible and try something new as we continue walking this hard road together, knowing that Jesus is with us, challenging us, calling us, and leading us forward.